Hey Weirdo, welcome back. Today I'm talking with Julie Trelstad, a woman who's spent the last 36 years surfing the technological waves of the publishing industry and somehow always managing to stay on ahead of the tide. Julie is the kind of person who's edited a book called The Not So Big House back in 1998 before anybody was talking about tiny homes or sustainable living and watched it sell over 500,000 copies. She was she was creating ebooks on CD-ROMs in the 1990s when the industry was still insisting that books had to be on paper. And now, as head of US publishing at Amlet.ai, she's helping authors navigate the most disruptive force the creative world has ever seen: artificial intelligence. But here's what makes Julie different. She doesn't fear AI. She doesn't think it's going to replace writers, and instead she's built an entire platform designed to protect authors' work and ensure that they get compensated fairly when AI companies use their content. And she's using AI herself in her fiction writing, not as a replacement for human curiosity, but as a liberating collaborative tool. In this conversation, we're going to talk about what's next for publishing, how authors can actually thrive in an AI-driven world, and why the future might not be as scary as it seems. We're also going to explore why she's been right about many industry shifts and that and what that tells us about where things are heading. Julie is genuinely having fun doing podcast conversations because she sees them as a way to figure things out through dialogue with diverse people. And I love that approach. So this is going to be a real conversation between two people following their curiosity. So Julie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be a weirdo.
I'm trying to take that word back. People see it as a diss, and I'm just like, no, it's who I am. It's what intelligent people, I think, label themselves as. It's just weird.
And that's what authors want to be. We all want to be different. And the main struggle for authors, it's interesting in the publishing world, and I've been around 35 years, is books are sold by the brand of the author. Like, we know who Stephen King is. You probably can't name his publisher. And so each author needs to establish themselves as a voice within a genre or a particular kind of book, but with a unique point of view. And I work with a lot of authors on that, finding out exactly who they are. And AI has been helpful to help them identify that.
It's very
how exactly weird they are.
So very fair. Can we delve into your history a little bit? Can you tell our audience who you are and why you're doing what you're doing?
Sure. Yeah, I set that up really well. I actually started book publishing because I studied architecture in school. So I ended up getting a job at an architecture magazine, followed by an architecture book publisher, and as a subject matter expert, which I think was a really great way to get into publishing because I was super curious about everything. And what it allowed me to do was to talk to a lot of architects, to go to the home shows, which is where I ended up when I was working for the Taunton Press and Fine Home Building magazine. Finding an author, I was just fascinated at the time. I was just getting ready to buy a house with this idea of houses that didn't need to be so big. It was really fun doing that. But since then, I've maintained in book publishing and have become more of a generalist year over year. So at this point, I've worked on every kind of book. I've worked on children's books. I've worked on textbooks. I've worked on books about wine, religious books, you name it. I've probably done it.
And can you tell us a little bit about Amlet.ai?
Sure. I just want to clarify, I'm the US lead for Amlet, but it's actually a European company. Okay. Amlet was started by two partners, Giacomo D'Angelo and Titus Pan. Giacomo is in Milan and Titus is in Germany. And there's something different happening in the UK overseas from the US and Canada, is that they have built very strong laws around what data can be trained by AIs. And in 2019, they created a law that basically said anyone who is an author or a content creator must be compensated. That's not true in the US. But so they created this tool, Titus did, it's a standard. just to be techie and geeky, it's called the ISCC, which is the International Standard Content Code, which is a way to identify a unique piece of content in an electronic format. So people can't read it, but machines can. So if you have a software application or you're hunting the web and you want to know who owns what content, this particular digital watermark, we call it a fingerprint, allows you to recognize who the owner of that work is, and also to compare it to similar works to see exactly how similar and whether or not somebody ripped it off, and if it's a case of piracy.
Not to get into the technical side of things, but is it built on blockchain?
It is a non-distributed network, so no one person owns it and it's out there. So Amlet actually is a registry that sits on top of the ISCC. So the ISCC is a code anyone can have. What Amlet does is it allows you to connect your intellectual property and your copyright to that ISCC. And just to be geeky, if you're going to talk about blockchain, we can also talk about APIs. So a web developer can connect the Amlet API and determine what content can be used, and in the future may be even able to access that content if the creator allows it, and for compensation. So early days, this is a brand new company.
That's great to hear that we're starting to come up with concepts that help compensate the creator. Because that's one of the biggest problems with any AI right now is everything was stolen. And now we're struggling to write laws. And my main argument for most people is the past. There's nothing that can be done about the past. But now
Agreed.
We can start implementing things for the future. So anything created by the human now going forward should be compensated.
Absolutely. And there's settlements in the lawsuits from Claude, and one is going through now on OpenAI that are worth billions of dollars to authors. And the average compensation, if you can get the documentation, which is part of the problem, but if you are part of that lawsuit, it's around $3,000 per book compensation. So these companies want to legitimately pay creators. They stole work, and in the US, as I say, you don't have to compensate for training, but you cannot pirate books and use it. So the law's a little different. The lawyers I've talked to in the publishing industry are looking to Europe to solve this problem because it's not coming in the US legislation, and I don't know what's happening in Canada, actually.
Canada's trying to go the European route, but right now Canada's very weird on their AI. They don't talk about it much, even though we're like the forefathers of AI. Like, we created it, we let it out into the world, and everybody else is taking credit for it. But yeah, we're kind of just sitting back and letting everybody play with it. But at the same time, like, I see AI is a misnomer. Like, there's no such thing as regulation. It's not going to be the same as it's going to be now in terms of creation, because I can just take somebody's picture, bring it onto my computer, pass it off as somebody else's. That's never going to go away in terms of the internet is, like how people steal things. That's never going to go away. There's way too many loopholes. But the ability to find the chain of ownership, that is the valuable part. It's not about like where it went or how it got used. It's who is it? And I think that's, for a long time, we haven't had that connection between the human and the creation.
Yeah, well, the machine couldn't see who the human was, right? Yeah. We have copyright, and we put a copyright notice in the front of the book, but as soon as that book gets torn apart or pulled down or copied, the copyright page goes away. It doesn't stick with the book. So this creates something that's permanent and actually embedded and created by the content itself, and can be proven by the human. So
question, is the intended use for like catching like fakes getting posted, or is the intended use just to compensate for, like, where is the future of the tool?
There's a number of uses, actually. So the first and foremost, is like, do not copy. It's like, and when you mentioned that thing about piracy, and like AI has made it super easy to copy books. Like, that is one thing it has done, and it's horrifying. Like, I had a client earlier this year who published a book. 10 days later, there were a bunch of copies of that book that were imitating it, that were like hijacking her marketing, that were just like, and her publisher was saying, don't do that, don't do that. And this is really the problem for the publishers, And for platforms like Amazon and Barnes and Noble, they are working really hard to not let this go through. But yeah, piracy is super easy now. But at least in US law, it is takedownable, and it is something that is definitely a no-no, a violation.
So do you hope that it one day becomes like a stopper for that, like at the initial creation of them?
I hope so. Yeah, because what will, like with Amlet, what's super interesting is that, like, say you have a book and you have it in English and French, you can upload both of those and you can see that there's like an 85% similarity, even though it's a totally different language. So if somebody pirates your book and is like over a 70% or even 50 or even 40% similar, we'll be able to identify it right away. So it makes it a lot faster to prove a case. But you could have also asked about, like, what are the other things? Is it just about compensation? Like, there's other things AI does besides copying and generating new material. Like, that's generative AI. It's also used in search engines. So can we go in and look inside these books and search and deliver results from inside the books? It's also used, we mentioned it before, training the AIs, in which case, like, for the large language models, basically they ate books whole and swallowed them and mixed them up into a big soup so that they're not individually identifiable, only used once and then discarded. But then if they're used in generative AI, can that book, like, can you write a book in the style of this book? Or can you write fan fiction using the same characters of this book? There's a lot. That should be a kind of use where authors get compensated every time it gets done.
You just picked out a point that I had just saw the other day. Disney is now allowing OpenAI to use the characters for generation. And I see a massive problem with that, mainly because you have two giant companies that have one that has the IP and one that has the ability to create the IP. And I very much suspect anybody creating with the Disney IP is not going to get compensated for the creation that they make with Disney's IP. If that makes any sense.
Exactly. If it's not originally yours, you don't necessarily own the copyright. And we talk a lot about, when we're having our conversations about input licensing and output licensing. So input is like you put your stuff into the machine and get paid for that, swallowing whole, that training, that bringing in. Output is when you create something that is so similar to something else, your copyright becomes dubious. Like, I'm not a lawyer, but I understand that, like, when we're doing licensing rights, just like if we license a song or a poem or we want to use it in a book, if you're using more than 20% of that thing, then you have to get permission and you have to compensate. And sometimes it's even less than 20%, just depending on, how famous and how well protected that right is. But if it comes out on the publishing side looking like that other person's work, you will need to compensate them.
Kind of like when artists sample other artists' music and that kind of thing.
Exactly. You're using little bits and pieces of other people's work in your work. They should be compensated for it. And in the US, you would go to, say, the Copyright Clearance Center to get that licensing right. And just a tip of, if you're self-publishing a book, I would argue, just don't put song lyrics in it. I mean, that's too much trouble. You can get in big trouble if you don't go through all those hoops.
It's okay if I put a song in any book I write, it'll be my own song now that I can create those.
Yeah, and you got to pay yourself for that.
I do want to get into a little point that you touched there on how the AIs don't actually read the books; they just kind of engulf them and put them in a soup.
Yeah, it's like math. So
why did they do that? Would it not be more beneficial to have the understanding of the context of the books as well as the book text?
I think that's another kind. I think there are some AIs, and when you talk about the difference between a large language model and why they're so prolific right now and why they're, like, these corporations are spending huge amounts of money, it's quantity over quality. So basically what they're doing is probability. So they're saying, like, the word after duck is always quack, or it's likely to appear in a same sentence. It's all probability. Like, what is the most likely next word in the sentence based on this context, based on this ginormous amount of data that we've pulled down, which is why like a lot of chats material put out from ChatGPT sounds super similar. It's just the way most frequent lowest common denominator, which is why it writes really bad fiction, because it writes the most obvious trope.
Very fair, because yeah, it's taking the most common denominator out of all of it. The other thing that I do want to add on is on the personality of the person who uses them. So much so that it's a reflection of yourself. So however you put into the LLM, it's going to return you basically the same thing. Will that hinder or help an author over time?
I think authors who are super savvy and learn to tune it to themselves are going to have some help in getting drafts or like writing their marketing materials to make them sound like them. You can definitely train your personal AI chatbot to use the words you prefer to use, to not use M dashes, to, I kill adverbs and tell it not to use actually ever. There's some things that you can do, and the more you can actually, hey, I just used actually. Maybe I do use it. You can put your own manuscripts in and say, like, this is my style, copy it. And it will condense it to say, like, use varied sentence structure. You like to use this kind of thing, and it will be useful. I think we're in early days, so it's not going to be perfect, and you really don't want it writing for you, but it can help you generate some drafts and to generate some ideas that aren't so far away from what you would actually want.
So right now the LLMs are still too new to be able to like give you a full complete book that'll be exactly what you want.
It'll give you a book. It won't be exactly what you want. And, there's a famous case that was, that actually happened last year. One of these fantasy novelists turned out her prompt, make my book sound more like my competitor in this scene. And she left the prompt in, like, classically.
At the very least, do some proofreading and make sure that your copy's all good. Even running it through an LLM, just say, like, is this good? Normally finds those things.
Or just fix my grammar, clean it up a little, make it tighter, make it shorter. But yeah, I spent an afternoon writing a cowboy romance, and I got something that was okay. It was a story. It had a beginning, middle, and an end. It had conflict. But it was just so predictable. And no matter what I did, it just kept like throwing things that were just like, I'm like, no, please no.
I wrote a 5,000 page book. So to give you some context, at the start of all of this, I got into some book deal thing that I paid for and was bad. I shouldn't have done it anyways. But anyways, I wrote
my
part of the book. I wrote part of a book for like my legacy, what I was trying to do, what I was showcasing. And I was actually surprised at how well Claude brought things out, but I didn't let it write itself. I made sure, like, said, here's my middle, beginning, and end. Here's the details I want to cover in these sections, like that. And then I went over it and over it and over it until I got every single detail in every single chapter that I wanted correct.
Perfect.
But doing that, a normal person isn't going to sit there and do that. Do you see LLMs getting to that level where a normal person is just going to be like, hey, I want to read a new book. Can you give me a brand new book? And it's going to actually be thrilling and entertaining?
I think that's sort of up to the authors. Wouldn't that be interesting if you had an author who wrote a really compelling world and wrote the backstories of a dozen characters, and then you could walk in and say, like, give me a new story in this world where the author has done all the work of like developing the rules and like who likes who and what are the dynamics and what are the personalities, and then letting the AI like make these sort of interactive things and like you can walk into it. I think the possibilities are really fun, but just like you like really controlled that process. I do think it's going to take somebody who's thoughtful about building a world, almost probably more like a video game, right?
Hmm.
Than a book where you're sort of creating all the possibilities and the avenues, sort of like the choose your own adventure idea. But there's no reason like somebody who's written a long series couldn't put that whole series in, and then you can get the bot and like keep going. If people find that entertaining, I think people are more passive and they just like, just give it to me. I don't know.
See, there's so many worlds. There's so many worlds that I would love to just like ask extra questions or have the main character like tell me more about certain parts of the story. And I think we actually just created a brand new market, because that's right. Like, hey,
This is fun.
you could build a whole GPT or a whole bot that can give you all the backstory, all of the characters, everything you need, and then you can build the rest. Yeah, I think we just, I don't know what to call it, but we created
We'll
some
call it
sort of
weird world, whatever.
real world, yeah, something like that. But
I
yeah,
think
like
yeah, why
I think
not? I think I'm going to experiment with that. Just do a chat GPT. That's a world. It's already being done in Scandinavia with textbooks, for instance, where the professors are creating, or the authors are creating a chat version of the textbook with some additional material and case studies to allow a learner to be interactive with the book.
I think you'll end up finding. See, this is where I'm hoping for the future, because the teaching ability that AI has, the capability of allowing people to have their own individual teacher, their own individual pace, and their own individual learning habits. Like, I can't wait for 100 years from now when we get to see the generation being born that was raised with no barrier to intellect. Imagine like the worlds that they create and things like that. What what do
We have
you
to keep
want
them
to?
off their we have to keep them off their phones. I think that's amazing. Like the creativity and the curiosity should definitely be like thought of and enforced. But there, it gets scary, right? How do we protect our children from where they can wander on the internet and so on? I think there's some like wonderful speculative fiction that has been written about these possible future worlds. And but I think we can also use it to like imagine our own worlds and to use it. But I think you can already go into Claude, for instance, and go into learning mode, and it can do that. But if you can buy an ebook of a book, why not be able to buy the chat version of the book? Like, why can't you should be able to go and download for whatever price they want it to be. Will it be the same price as the ebook or the hardcover? And then have the licensable right to use with your own personal chat. Like, if there was a way to make it so you couldn't resell it but use it for personal use, why not? That's kind of fun.
I I see it as like precursor to. Are you a Trekkie?
Uh, Original Trekkie.
Yes. So
Captain Kirk.
I basically am equating this to our start of our holodecks, right? The ability to explore the world beyond the original creator's idea. Um, this is where it starts. This is what we get to play with until we can have the actual VR rooms where we can disappear into those realities. Um, what's something you hope comes out of the near future, at the very least? Like, I know over the next 10 years we're going to have some harsh learnings. Um, we're about to experience change like no generation has ever experienced before. But what are you hoping comes out on the other side?
I even hope in the next couple of years that authors and creators get to participate in this, that they have a say. And I do hope that instead of these massive LLMs, we'll have smaller, more boutique models that are very thoughtfully created. I often use the example of like, if you wanted a real good medical chatbot, you would want it trained with scientific journals and medical textbooks and not scraped WebMD or the comments off of Facebook about a health condition.
Yes.
So like things that are more, just more thoughtful and just built with discernment.
You brought up a good point. I'm actually in a group called the Intelligent Internet. It was made by the ex-CEO of Stability, Imad Mastaq. He's basically creating a new economic model that benefits humanity. So he's building LLMs specifically for use cases that benefit humanity. One of which being a medical agent that is knowledgeable about all the medical stuff without any of the frilly stuff that comes.
Without the unproven theories. Yes.
Yes. So
yes.
it's interesting. There are people working on those levels of breakthroughs, and we are seeing it. Like I'm promoting him so much. Like I'm amazed at what he's trying to build, because it's essentially the economic system that we needed, instead of the one we have. Like it actually is like your compute is beneficial or something like that. I can't remember. It's too high level for me, but it's so amazing that people are coming up with these new ideas that are benefiting over just taking away from people.
Yeah, and I think exactly, and I think we should be looking for, like, what have we not thought of before? What are we missing here? Like, and that's, with all this computing power at our fingertips, like what we can do now is just unbelievable. We couldn't do this before. But what that reminds me, you're talking about the VR worlds. I was having lunch with some of my architecture friends a couple of weeks ago, and they were telling me that their clients walk in now, and the architect will give them the floor plans, and the clients will take ChatGPT and turn it into 3D, and they'll be able to walk through their new kitchen. Like, the architect doesn't even have to do that for them anymore. Like, they can do it on their own. And so as a profession, they're sort of having to adapt to consumers having so much more power in their own hands, and to use it responsibly and put the hinges on the right side of the door and the plumbing where it makes sense. But, yes. If anyone can create their own castle, literally.
It's funny. Well, I do want to. There's two topics I want to get into here. One being that I don't think LLMs are the solution. To be honest with you, to me, we need SLMs, like clusters of SLMs, things that are highly knowledgeable, that are specific to each task, that work in tandem, the same way a human does. Like, we have our own cells that work together in tandem to do a job. We need small language models that do the same thing, that are specific to, okay, you're writing, okay, you're plotting the series ahead of time, you're analyzing this, like having
inside my own little world with my walls around it. Yes, exactly.
And I honestly think that's more of the route to AGI than any of the LLMs. Like, we do need these big models that know everything, but at the same time, the ones we want operating on us, and the ones that we want dealing with specific information that's highly accurate, those are when you want the small LLMs that are going to be, or the small language models that are going to be clustered together, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree. And for professionals, we're going to want specific models just for our profession, that really help us do what we need to do. I'm looking forward to, like, the AI-driven publishing company that would do the copy editing and the proofreading, and the fixing all the typos and the typesetting and the stuff that, is still, although we have tools, it's still not, we don't need to spend our time doing that as writers,
Very fair.
Don't want to put anyone out of business, but
I honestly, everybody keeps on saying there's going to be job loss, and I'm like, yeah, but there's going to be so many more jobs. I don't think we're ever going to not have a job. I can't see it. There's going to be people who opt out of working, and that'll be perfectly fine. But I don't think human work will ever go away, because we're just too curious.
And we want, life needs to have a purpose, right? I suppose we could. I mean, that could be the dream too, to have your bot bringing in income while you do what you need to do.
So the other thing I wanted to ask is, starting out as an author, what are some practical advice you can give to some starting authors? I would like to publish a book one day. I'm not sure when, but I would like to try.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing you can do, and like yay AI, is research. Know the corner. Like if you want to write a book, know all the books written in the last 5 years that are similar to it. Read them, find out who published them, how they're received, read the reviews, so that it's not that hard to do the kind of deep research now to really understand your corner of the market. And book publishing, at least the biggest problem, I think the biggest obstacle a lot of authors face is when they try to do something that breaks the mold through genres. It's like, I think you can have infinite creativity as long as you adhere to the rules of a particular genre. So if it's romance, happily ever after is required. But I guess you can break the rules after you know them. But so that would be my first step, is like really know that corner. And then by knowing that corner, you'll also know like how long these books typically are. Are they short books? Are they long books? Are they detailed? Do they have illustrations? Are they written at a certain level? So like the more you know about the pond you're jumping into before you do, the better off. The less friction you will have should you want to publish it. Like one thing I made a really early mistake when I started my own publishing company. I made card decks because I thought they were cool. I was like really worried about ebooks coming in and people wanting even more physical product. But what I learned really quickly is like, bookstores can't display them. They don't want to take off the shrink wrap. They don't want to ruin that box, and people don't know what's in it. And like, it's actually a lot harder to sell than a book because people understand how a book is and how, open it up and take a look. Well, couldn't do that as easy. Also more expensive, and like inventory, all that. Now we have print on demand, which means you can upload a PDF of your book and they can be printed to order, so you don't have to have a garage full of books.
And how does one go about getting a publisher?
Well, as of this last year, there is as much revenue in self-published books as in published books. So interesting. But published books still represent like the bigger dollar per book. Like there's millions of self-published books. There are tens of thousands of, millions now, but every year tens of thousands of traditionally published books. If you, there's a website called Publishers Marketplace. It's a paid version, $25 a month, where you can go in and see all the deals that are happening between authors and publishing companies. And that will tell you what literary agents are buying what kind of books. There's all this data available. So if you wanted to go after that, I would recommend going to this site. And there's others similar to it where you can, again, do deep research on what publishers are buying what books and now, and what is trending and what they're looking for.
Is there anything else that we haven't covered?
I don't know. This has been fun. Trying to think about talk about rights and writing. I mean, I don't know if we talked about like how authors can use AI without writing. And what I've done this year is I've created a few chatbots. One I call my little black dress chatbot, which actually, there I used that word again, dang it, allows an author to identify their unique brand. So it's like when I was an acquisitions editor, again, it was sort of like, what is the genre standard for this kind of book? And then how does this author stand out and create something unique and different? And that chatbot helps them identify that by doing the research and asking a lot of very pointed questions of the author to figure that out. So branding is one. You can do the deep research on the competitive analysis. You can certainly use it to help you with social media, creating graphics, helping you with your email newsletter, just like automating some of these more tedious tasks. There's a lot you can do, as like authors are usually one-person businesses. So thinking of it as a potential of hiring a social media manager or helping you figure out the strategy and positioning and even profitability of your book, you can really figure out a lot fast just using a chat tool rather than, having to have deep industry knowledge.
It's funny you mentioned that because I think I just watched Gary Vee say something that not knowing is no longer an excuse you to not doing something, because now you have a chatbot that will tell you exactly how to do something. There's no excuse to not do something.
Yeah, like
Um,
I was Perplexity will actually do it for you. It just like it will log into your app and it will fix it. It's just like, whoa, what just happened?
yes, and as a software developer, those tools are great too. I've built plenty of websites now just with AI because there's no reason I need to code anymore. I see a lot of computer work going out the door. But
Yeah,
the flip
but
side is you've got a lot of human work and in terms of reviewing and all the fun stuff. None of like the things where like you actually get to read a book and enjoy it and critique it and that kind of thing. Those are the fun things that humans really do, um, that we don't really get to do because of all the computer work we have to do. So
yeah, and we can play with design and being creative and like looking at it from a different angle or creating like weird I created an AI course. It was just like learn book marketing with rabbits, and it actually like it made all the lessons with bunny puns. And it just like I have not published this yet, but it was just it amused me to do it because I took my knowledge and just gave it a twist and said, "This is silly. Why not do it?" Multiply your book sales.
biggest thing I've learned here is just play with it, have fun, enjoy.
Indeed.
That's the thing I just tell everybody is play with it. Find something fun you think it can do, ask it if it can do it, and go from there. Because play is the easiest way to learn.
Yeah, exactly. And that will make you stand out. Like if you're gonna use AI content, like go all out. Make it over the top. Make it weird. Make it just like something that gets you noticed in a creative way.
Hmm. I need to figure that out. Aside from me being in a nudie most of the time, need something a little bit better than that. So I'm out of questions. I just want to give you a little bit to tell everybody where to find you and anything that you want to leave for our audience.
Yeah, like I would just say definitely play with AI, be optimistic, get involved, learn as much as you can. You can find Amlet at Amlet.ai. If you want to register your work and get an ISCC and an Amlet code, you can go there. And if you want to find me and want to talk about publishing, I'm also at paperbacks.pixels.com, where I run an author training business. So helping authors navigate this world.
Perfect. And I'll make sure to have all of the details down in the comments below. And I hope that we can start seeing some of our audience started creating these worlds because I would love to play around with some of those. I
Yes.
think we actually created a new business right here, which is
Okay.
interesting. So
Why don't you build a website for it and we'll just start populating that?
sounds good. To
Okay.
everybody out there, thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the show and stay weird.